Hello, KT family. Today we will be talking about financial aid, which is a very important aspect of the college application process. This includes typical expenses, tackling the FAFSA, and CSS/IDOC. So let's get started. What is the importance of financial aid? Typically, college is very expensive, and it could go up to nearly $90,000 in our current status quo in 2024. This cost seems to be continuing to increase. It of course depends on if you attend a public or private institution, but the cost of college can ranging from $10K to $90K. Any federal, state, institutional, and private monetary funding and resources to help students and families pay for their college expenses is identified as financial aid. So what are some typical costs of attending college? So we have two distinct costs. One are billed costs, which are assigned by the college. So they tell you this is what you have to pay for tuition fees, and this is what you have to pay for on-campus housing. This can also include a meal plan. As for unbilled costs, this includes stuff that you wouldn't necessarily think of and can range person to person. So that includes transportation, if you are commuting to college, books and supplies, off-campus housing, and any personal expenses. So a great way to calculate about how much aid or how much you are expected to pay for college is a net price calculator. Net price is the amount that a student pays to attend an institution in an academic year after subtracting scholarships and grants the student receives. Available on each college's websites are net price calculators that can help prospective students get a better handle of what they will be expected to pay at that college or university. So what are some forms of financial aid? So there are four distinct categories: loans, grants, scholarships, and work studies. So under loans are federal direct subsidized loans, federal direct unsubsidized loans, and private student loans. Check out our student loans video on that, where you can kind of deep dive into what each of these types of loans mean. Grants include federal Pell Grants, federal supplemental education opportunity grants, and institutional grants, which we'll talk about more. Scholarships can range from merit-based scholarships, which is based on your grades, or academics, athletics, etc. They can also be institutional-based or regarding outside or external scholarship resources, which can be at a national, state, or local level. A great way to look into this is check the school's financial aid website. And of course, we have work study, which is based on demonstrated financial need typically. So this can include on-campus jobs where students work about 10 to 15 plus hours per week, and they get paid on an hourly basis for school expenses, and they're typically around the minimum wage costs. And this is a great option for students who plan on working during school, as they typically work around class schedules. So what are some applications used for applying to financial aid? So two of the biggest ones, and typically required for most institutions, are FAFSA and CSS. So FAFSA is the federal and state aid, which includes grants, scholarships, and loans. There is no fee for applying using this application, and it's used by any post-secondary institution that offers federal financial aid, public or private. CSS typically covers grants, scholarships, and loans provided by the school. There is an application fee of $25 for one school and $16 for every additional school you apply to, but there is a waiver. So if you are eligible for taking the SAT for free without a fee, then you're probably eligible to also get fee waivers for all your application fees with CSS. And this is used by participating schools, typically a lot of private institutions. So please look up which institutions are looking for you to fill out the CSS profile. So let's break down what exactly FAFSA is. So starting 2023 to 2024 school years, there is 36 questions, and this must be completed every year, even after you are admitted to college. So it's the first year, second year, third year. There's two sections, one for the parent and one for the student, and the maximum Pell Grant you will receive is $7,395. Keep in mind, grants are not meant to be repaid. They are money they are giving to you for you to cover your college education costs. So there's 7 categories of information that they want. 1, general student information. 2, income and assets. 3, dependency status. 4, parent information. 5, independent student data. 6, school information. And 7, signatures. So here are some of the general information required. Student citizenship status. This includes non-citizen parents. Use specific codes for social security numbers. Print signature page to sign. Colleges where students is applying to, so each one will receive your FAFSA application. Number of children in household, number of people in household, number of people who are attending college currently in households. Then for parents specifically, you need to include their marriage status, whether they're your legal guardians or not. A lot of technical factors such as that. Some more financial information that's required. So you need your parent and student's assets. So this includes savings, checkings, investments, other properties. All 529 accounts as a parent's assets. Don't include your primary home, as that's not considered an asset. It's the house that you live in. Don't include your value of retirement, life insurance, value of small family businesses. That isn't super significant. Debt is not reported except on reported assets. And parents and student income, of course, must be included, whether they be taxed and untaxed. And keep in mind, the way it works of which income you're reporting is about 2 years prior to the actual application of the FAFSA. For instance, for the 2023 to 2024 FAFSA, you'd be reporting your 2021 income. Here are some important documents that are very frequently needed to fill out the FAFSA. So you have the student's 2021 federal tax return W-2 forms, or whichever year it applies for your application cycle, your parents' tax return, social security card, documentation of other non-taxable income, driver's license, business or investment firm records, current bank and brokerage account statements. And there are additional documents that may apply to you. For example, if you are not a citizen yet, there are other forms of valid identification. So there are some major changes to the FAFSA from previous years, which will probably be in effect for a few of the next upcoming years. So one is the release date. FAFSA will launch in December now instead of October. This is a slight disadvantage, as that means there will be less time to complete the FAFSA for specific school deadlines. 2, a great advantage is that there are less questions. Instead of 108 questions, which typically is what it took up for the past 10 years, the FAFSA will be simplified to 36 questions, which makes the process a lot simpler. Now, instead of the expected family contribution, they are advising to adjust this to become the Student Aid Index, otherwise known as SAI. EFC was used to determine the financial need of a family. SAI is basically the same thing, it's just a significant name change. Eligibility based on AGI and SAI. So federal financial aid comes through the Pell Grant for those with significant financial need. Now SAI and the adjusted gross income, AGI, will both be taken into account. Pell Grant is need-based, but there is no income limit cutoff. And the unfortunate news is that there has been an elimination of discounts for multiple children in college. For example, previously a family with a calculated EFC of $60,000 may have a drop by about 50% if they had 2 students in college, making it an EFC of $30,000 per student. But now the calculated SAI would be $60,000 per student, so you no longer have that discount where it splits up among students. Also, select parents need to put in their information. So parents who provided the most financial support in the 2021 tax year will have to complete the FAFSA, whether they are the custodial parent or not. This can possibly lower your financial aid. Exclusion of contributions. So previously, families need to report money that was received or gifted by others for the student. These external contributions will not be included in the SAI. And increased income protection allowance. So FAFSA's income protection allowance excludes a part of the income from the SAI to account for basic living expenses. Now we're moving on to the CSS profile. So the CSS profile is known as the College Scholarship Service application for institutional aid. So there are 17 sections and hundreds of questions, so it is significantly longer so please dedicate some more time towards this. The deadline for CSS typically varies from school to school, but it'll be around January 1st to March 31st. CSS profile cost is waived for families who with an adjusted gross income up to $100,000 and students who qualify for an SAT fee waiver, or children who are an orphan or ward of the court under the age of 24. The application is available on October 1st, unlike FAFSA. Non-custodial parents need separate profiles. It's significantly more detailed than FAFSA, and there will be questions specific to schools you apply to. Maybe not for all schools, but for some select schools. Here's a little example of kind of the interface of CSS because it is a bit longer. The questions relatively remain the same, but the layout has changed this year. So instead of 10 to 15 questions per page, you'll now only see 2 to 4 questions. So it's a lot more digestible, but it is a very long process. So here's a general overview of the steps to complete. 1. Make a note of school-specific deadlines for the CSS profile. You do not want to miss your deadline, and because of the high range of deadlines, if you're applying to a lot of schools, this is super important. 2. Gather your documents. Here's a list of a lot of documents that you might need, which is very similar to the FAFSA, but it's a lot more specific. So if you have a small business, there will be a lot more things you need to include, and stocks and bonds and trusts that also need to be adjusted for. 3. You need to create a College Board account/register. If you have already applied for taking APs or taking the SAT, you will probably already have a College Board account. So complete the basic information, and then you'll be led to the CSS profile and log in with your College Board account for that as well. If you do not have one, then please make one at this time. 4. Parent data. So this is if you're dependent. Fill in the basic data for the first and second parent, including employment data. Always include yourself in the number of people in your household. 5. Parent income and benefits if dependent. This is the longest section of the CSS profile, so have a copy of your federal tax return to speed up the process. The first part is for the previous year's income. The second part is for the year before. The third part is for your expected income for the upcoming year. Then there are about 6 other sections, which include parent assets section, parent expenses section, student data section, student assets, expenses for other family members, explanation and special circumstances, and then school-specific supplemental questions. So here are some frequently asked questions when it comes to the CSS profile. 1. Do I have to answer every question on the CSS profile? You only have to answer what is required, which will be indicated by in quotations required next to the questions. We encourage you to not answer questions about retirement or Social Security because you have to reveal your retirement account balances. These assets are not required for institutional aid calculations, so please avoid doing so. 2. What if I'm divorced or separated? If you are a 2-household family, most colleges will require both households to fill out the CSS profile. You will have to complete 2 separate applications. If you can't get information from one parent, reach out to the school and communicate directly with the financial aid office, who can help you complete a non-custodial parent waiver. Now, the next thing we're going to move on is IDoc, which is definitely a supplement to the CSS profile, and it's known as the Institutional Documentation Service. So the IDoc allows you to submit documentation directly to the schools that request it. The documentation acts as supplement for the CSS profile and is required proof of financial information in the application. For example, if you had reported a certain yearly income for the year 2021, you have to submit your tax return for IDoc so they can verify that the information you are stating on CSS profile is true. Similarly to the CSS profile, IDoc is also administered by the College Board. If you need to submit documents, which not all students will have to, you'll receive an email from the College Board, which you can use to register and log into the IDoc. You can also track submitted documents on this platform. Here's a sample of what IDoc may look like for you and the general interface. Here's also a more detailed description of what it might look like for documents. So there are some key takeaways. It is a huge process and a lot of information, so take your time digesting. There are various forms of financial aid: loans, scholarships, federal aid, and institutional aid. The FAFSA opens December and it is for federal aid. The CSS profile opens in October and is for institutional aid. Pay attention to school deadlines to complete financial aid applications on time. You're encouraged to only share what is required and reach out directly to schools if you cannot provide required information. It's a lot, so students, good luck and take your time and feel free to ask questions. Have fun as you embark on this college journey.